What do you think?
Wow. It's for you, right?
It's for both of us. Don't go away.
Don't worry, there's not enough blood left in my legs to go anywhere.
For millions of viewers, 2.5 Men was the perfect sitcom. It felt effortless, and yet it was filled with perfectly timed jokes and unforgettable one-liners. But behind those laughs was a production fighting battles the audience never saw. Rumor has it, there were instances when 2.5 Men bloopers made filming impossible. But that's not all. A lot was happening behind the scenes that viewers never got to see. Today, we'll unveil everything. The sitcom that was never supposed to be this chaotic. When 2.5 Men premiered on CBS on September 22, 2003, almost no one expected it to become one of the defining sitcoms of the decade. Yet over the next 12 seasons and 262 episodes, the comedy evolved into a television powerhouse, regularly attracting between 13 and 15 million viewers during its peak years and finishing multiple seasons among America's most watched scripted series. On screen, everything appeared effortless. Charlie Harper's beach house was always buzzing. Alan's bad luck never failed to deliver another punchline, and Jake Harper's deadpan reactions made every family dinner feel perfectly timed. But behind those polished 22-minute episodes was a production that often looked far less controlled than viewers ever realized. The series was filmed before a live studio audience. This meant that every joke had to land in real time. Ever so often, the audience would laugh longer than expected. The actors then had to wait before delivering the next line. If someone stumbled over a sentence or laughed unexpectedly, the scene often had to begin again. Those moments eventually filled official blooper reels. As Chuck Lorre once explained about comedy writing, if it's funny, it's funny. The bloopers that sometimes made TV better. By the time 2.5 Men debuted in September 2003, Chuck Lorre had already earned a reputation as one of television's most disciplined sitcom creators. His scripts were tightly structured, with dialogue carefully engineered around timing and audience reactions. Obvious mistakes rarely survived. If an actor flubbed a line or skipped a joke, the scene was almost always filmed again. Yet Lorre also understood that comedy sometimes produced magic that couldn't be written. Authentic moments that genuinely made a scene stronger occasionally escaped the cutting room floor. A split-second smile, an unexpected pause, or a perfectly natural reaction could sometimes stay because it felt more believable than the flawless take. That distinction explains one of the biggest myths surrounding the show. Fans often claim that half the bloopers made the final cut. But that simply isn't true. The production drew a clear line between unusable mistakes and usable spontaneity. A forgotten line, an actor asking for help, or a complete burst of laughter immediately stopped the take and later appeared on official gag reels instead. A natural grin that fit the character, however, or a brief hesitation caused by an unexpectedly funny delivery might remain because viewers would never recognize it as a mistake. In other words, the audience wasn't watching bloopers. They were watching moments where reality briefly blended with performance. Charlie Sheen became one of the biggest sources of those unpredictable moments. Interestingly, it wasn't always because he forgot his dialogue. During rehearsals, Sheen occasionally delivered the exact same words, but altered the timing, emphasis, or rhythm just enough to surprise Jon Cryer. Since Cryer expected a familiar cadence, those tiny changes often produced completely genuine reactions. Alan Harper's awkward pauses, suppressed smiles, or quick glances away from Charlie sometimes felt so authentic because they actually were. Rather than breaking character, Cryer instinctively folded those surprises into Alan's anxious personality. The result was comedy that appeared more natural precisely because it wasn't perfectly rehearsed. Ironically, the brothers' best chemistry often came from one actor catching the other completely off guard. The live audience added another unpredictable variable. Sitcom timing depends on dialogue landing in carefully measured beats, but audiences don't always laugh on schedule. Some jokes triggered applause so loud or laughter so prolonged that the actors simply had to stand there until the room settled. Instead of immediately launching into the next line, Charlie or Alan would wait several seconds, sometimes exchanging tiny expressions while the audience recovered. Editors occasionally left those pauses intact because trimming them made the conversation feel rushed or unnatural. Those lingering reactions helped create the illusion that the Harper brothers were actually listening to one another rather than racing through a script. Of course, not every mistake could be disguised. Warner Brothers eventually released numerous official gag reels showing exactly what viewers weren't supposed to see. Charlie Sheen repeatedly lost his place, laughing before asking, "What's the line?" or joking with the audience while someone fed him the dialogue. Jon Cryer, despite his reputation as one of television's most prepared sitcom actors, occasionally stumbled over surprisingly simple sentences, stopped mid-scene, and restarted with a laugh. Entire casts dissolved into uncontrollable laughter after accidental word substitutions transformed innocent dialogue into something completely unintended. Those outtakes became fan favorites. But even besides this one point, things were fairly complicated behind the scenes. Jake was quietly running the entire production. When 2.5 Men premiered on CBS on September 22, 2003, most viewers assumed Charlie Sheen and Jon Cryer were carrying the production. In reality, one of the biggest factors determining how each filming day unfolded wasn't the show's biggest star. It was 10-year-old Angus T. Jones. Cast as Jake Harper, Jones instantly became one of television's most recognizable child actors. But unlike his adult co-stars, he couldn't simply stay on set until the work was finished. California child labor laws dictated nearly every aspect of his workday, meaning producers, assistant directors, camera crews, and even the writers had to structure production around one elementary school student. While audiences laughed at Jake's effortless deadpan humor, very few realized that behind the scenes, the youngest cast member quietly controlled the production schedule. California's entertainment labor laws are among the strictest in the United States, particularly for child performers. Because Jones was only 10 years old during the first season, every filming day came with legal limits. His working hours were capped according to state regulations, and those hours included far more than simply acting. Time had to be reserved for on-set education with certified studio teachers, mandatory meal breaks, rest periods, and transportation. There were also restrictions on how late into the evening a child could work. Every minute counted. If Jones reached his legally permitted work limit, production involving Jake simply stopped, regardless of whether scenes had been completed. Unlike Charlie Sheen or Jon Cryer, who could continue filming into the night if necessary, Angus had to leave when the law said his day was over. That reality shaped the structure of countless episodes. Many viewers have noticed that Jake often appears heavily in the opening scenes before disappearing for long stretches, only to return near the end. While those absences sometimes fit the story naturally, such as Jake going to school, staying with Judith, or spending time upstairs, they also reflected practical scheduling decisions. Production teams commonly filmed Jake's scenes first, maximizing the hours available before moving on to Charlie and Alan's dialogue-heavy material. Once Angus left for tutoring or reached his legal work limit, Sheen and Cryer continued filming scenes that didn't require Jake's presence. So in reality, an entire multi-million-dollar television production frequently revolved around the schedule of one child actor. The remarkable part is that Angus rarely made those constraints more difficult. Child actors often struggle with concentration, fatigue, or maintaining continuity through repeated takes. But Jones developed a reputation for professionalism unusually early in his career. One skill proved especially valuable: learning not to laugh. Sitting across from Charlie Sheen, whose sarcastic one-liners regularly broke seasoned adult actors during rehearsals, Angus mastered the art of remaining almost completely expressionless. Many viewers interpreted Jake's blank stare as part of the character's personality, but it also reflected practical discipline. Every unexpected laugh from the child actor meant another reset, another take, and another precious minute disappearing from his legally limited workday. Remaining stone-faced helped save time and kept production moving. Ironically, that restraint became one of Jake Harper's defining traits. While Charlie delivered outrageous jokes and Alan reacted with exaggerated panic, Jake often responded with a calm expression or a perfectly timed one-word answer. The contrast became one of the show's funniest running gags, but behind the comedy was a young actor carefully trained to hold character no matter what happened around him. Veteran sitcom performers often praise the ability to stay in the scene, and Jones learned that lesson long before most actors his age had finished elementary school. As the series grew into one of television's biggest hits, so did Jones's paycheck. By the early 2010s, his salary stood at $350,000 per episode, making him one of the highest-paid child actors in TV history. Then, in November 2012, everything changed. In a video for the Forerunner Chronicles religious ministry, the 19-year-old stunned Hollywood by calling 2.5 Men filth and urging viewers, please stop watching it. He added, if you watch 2.5 Men, please stop watching 2.5 Men. I'm on 2.5 Men, and I don't want to be on it. The comments dominated entertainment headlines because they came from someone still employed by the show. The backlash was immediate, but so was Jones's attempt to repair the damage. Within days, he released a statement praising his colleagues and apologizing for how his remarks had affected them. Without qualification, I am grateful to and have the highest regard and respect for all of the wonderful people on 2.5 Men, he said. Chuck Lorre, Peter Roth, and the many people at Warner Brothers and CBS are responsible for one of the most important experiences in my life. Although he returned briefly in a reduced capacity during season 11 and made a cameo in the series finale in 2015, his regular role was effectively over. Jones chose not to chase another major acting career. Shocking, right? Well, there's a lot more from where that came. Hidden secrets only longtime fans notice. Even the most devoted 2.5 Men fans often miss one of the show's cleverest behind-the-scenes secrets, and it walks through Charlie Harper's front door 4 different times. Jennifer Taylor is remembered almost exclusively as Chelsea Melini, Charlie's longest and most serious girlfriend, a relationship that lasted from season 6 into season 8 and even led to an engagement. But Chelsea wasn't actually Jennifer Taylor's first character on the show, not even her second or third. Long before she became the woman who nearly convinced Charlie Harper to settle down, she had already appeared as 3 completely different women. In season 1, she played Suzanne, one of Charlie's romantic interests. In season 2, she returned as Tina, another former girlfriend. Then, in season 5, she appeared yet again as Nina, an entirely unrelated character. Only afterward did producers cast her as Chelsea, making her one of the most recognizable recurring characters in the series. These performances are separated by years, but once you see it, it's impossible to unsee. Jennifer Taylor's unusual journey wasn't an accident. It reflected one of Chuck Lorre's favorite casting philosophies. If an actor worked well the first time, bring them back. Sitcom audiences rarely remember one-episode guest appearances years later, giving producers unusual freedom to reuse performers in entirely different roles. Lorre had already employed this approach on several of his other productions, and 2.5 Men became no exception. Instead of endlessly searching for unfamiliar faces, the casting team frequently invited reliable guest actors back, sometimes after several seasons had passed. Jennifer Taylor wasn't the only actor quietly recycled by the production. Actress Judy Greer also appeared as 3 completely different characters over the course of the series. Her first role came in Season 4 as Myra Melnick, Herb Melnick's flirtatious younger sister, who causes chaos during Herb and Judith's wedding after revealing she had previously slept with Charlie. Years later, after Charlie Sheen had left the series, Greer returned as Bridget Schmidt, Walden Schmidt's estranged billionaire wife, whose divorce from Walden sets much of Season 9 in motion. Then, in another playful bit of casting, she appeared once more as Danny, a woman who looked remarkably like Bridget and briefly dated Walden, with the resemblance itself becoming part of the joke. 3 unrelated characters, 1 actress. Similarly, Liz Vassay first appeared in Season 1 as Kate, a woman Charlie dated briefly, before returning years later in Seasons 8 and 9 as Michelle, another entirely different love interest. Character actor Joel Murray, the brother of Bill Murray, also became a familiar face in disguise, portraying multiple unrelated characters throughout both the Charlie Sheen and Ashton Kutcher eras, including Petey, Doug, Nick, and others in brief appearances. You see, very few viewers remembered every one-episode girlfriend from several seasons earlier. That gave the casting department unusual freedom to bring proven performers back without confusing the audience, especially when years separated their appearances. But that's not all. The show's realism also came from something far less obvious than recycled actors. Charlie Sheen had a habit of surprising Jon Cryer in ways that never appeared on the page. Interestingly, he usually didn't change the dialogue itself. Instead, he altered the rhythm. A pause would arrive a second earlier than expected. A sarcastic emphasis would land on a different word, or a punchline would be delivered with completely different timing than during rehearsal. Because sitcom comedy depends heavily on rhythm, even tiny changes forced Cryer to react instinctively. In interviews, Cryer has spoken about Sheen's natural comic instincts, noting, "Charlie had an effortless charisma." That spontaneity often translated into scenes that felt less rehearsed and more like 2 real brothers interrupting each other instead of actors carefully following marks. Those tiny surprises occasionally produced reactions no writer could have scripted. Alan Harper would hesitate before answering, glance away for a split second, or suppress a smile that looked completely genuine. Rather than weakening the scene, those moments often strengthened Alan's personality as the anxious, perpetually uncomfortable younger brother. Editors recognized that distinction. While obvious mistakes still required another take, authentic reactions that remained perfectly in character sometimes survived into the finished episode. Perhaps that's why so many longtime viewers mistakenly believed the show left countless bloopers in the final cut. In reality, the official gag reels tell a very different story. Charlie Sheen forgetting a line and asking, "What's the line?" Jon Cryer stumbling through simple dialogue, or the entire cast dissolving into laughter, almost always resulted in another take. Those obvious mistakes became bonus material. But as the show progressed, production got darker and darker, until filming became impossible. When Charlie Sheen's real life started rewriting the show, for nearly 8 seasons, Charlie Sheen wasn't just the star of 2.5 Men. He was the show. His effortless charm, razor-sharp comic timing, and natural chemistry with Jon Cryer turned Charlie Harper into one of television's most recognizable sitcom characters. By 2010, Sheen had become the highest-paid actor on television, earning about $1.8 million per episode. But while millions of viewers still saw the carefree bachelor on Monday nights, a very different story was unfolding behind the cameras at Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank, California. What had once been a production known for harmless bloopers and laughter was slowly becoming consumed by rehab stays, missed filming schedules, legal disputes, and one of the most public meltdowns in television history. The warning signs had been building for years. Charlie Sheen had struggled publicly with substance abuse dating back to the 1990s, but by the time 2.5 Men entered its 8th season in 2010, those problems had become increasingly difficult to ignore. By the 8th season, Charlie Sheen's personal struggles were no longer confined to tabloid headlines. They were beginning to disrupt one of television's biggest productions. The first major interruption came on February 24, 2010, when CBS and Warner Brothers suspended production after Sheen voluntarily entered a rehabilitation program. Filming eventually resumed, allowing Season 7 to be completed, but the situation remained fragile. Less than a year later, on January 27, 2011, Sheen was rushed to the hospital following a widely reported medical emergency at his Los Angeles home. Within days, he entered rehabilitation once again, and Warner Brothers announced that production on 2.5 Men had been suspended indefinitely. Initially, the studio hoped the hiatus would be temporary, but as the weeks passed, it became increasingly clear that the show could not continue under the existing circumstances. 8 episodes remained on the production schedule, but they were never filmed, leaving Season 8 with just 16 completed episodes instead of the planned 24. This made it the shortest season of Sheen's 8-year run as Charlie Harper. As filming became increasingly difficult, longtime viewers began noticing subtle changes in Charlie Harper's on-screen presence. In the earlier seasons, the character rarely stayed still for long. Charlie was constantly walking through the Malibu beach house, greeting visitors at the front door, pouring drinks at the kitchen counter, pacing between rooms, flopping onto the piano bench, or punctuating punchlines with physical gestures. By contrast, many Season 8 scenes unfolded with Charlie already seated on the living room couch, leaning against the kitchen island, or remaining in one position for extended conversations. His entrances became less energetic. There was noticeably less physical comedy, and the fast, fluid movement that had defined the character for years seemed diminished. Fans have debated these differences ever since. Behind the scenes, Warner Brothers later argued that the production was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. When the studio formally terminated Sheen's contract on March 7, 2011, it cited dangerously self-destructive conduct, repeated violations of his contractual obligations, and behavior that had made it impossible to continue producing the series. Court filings submitted during Sheen's subsequent $100 million wrongful termination lawsuit painted an even more troubling picture. According to Warner Brothers, Sheen frequently struggled to remember dialogue, occasionally arrived at work exhausted after little or no sleep, and required additional assistance hitting his camera marks. Sheen disputed many of those allegations. The dispute quickly became one of Hollywood's biggest entertainment stories. During a series of televised interviews, Sheen unleashed bizarre catchphrases that dominated popular culture. "I'm on a substance," he famously declared. "It's called Charlie Sheen." He also insisted, "I have tiger blood," and repeatedly proclaimed he was winning. Meanwhile, Chuck Lorre largely avoided direct interviews, responding instead through the vanity cards that appeared at the end of his sitcoms. Behind the sarcasm, however, more than 200 crew members suddenly found themselves without work when production shut down. Many longtime viewers believe they can actually see the difference simply by watching Season 8. Compare Charlie Harper from the early years with his final season, and the contrast is striking. Perhaps the greatest irony is that the official blooper reels had quietly foreshadowed the larger story years earlier. Audiences laughed as Charlie forgot lines, joked with the crowd, or asked crew members for help remembering dialogue. At the time, those moments felt like harmless behind-the-scenes comedy. In retrospect, they now stand alongside Warner Brothers' later legal claims that memory lapses and concentration problems had become increasingly serious challenges during production. The bloopers themselves didn't bring Two and a Half Men to the brink, but they offered a glimpse of a reality that by early 2011 could not be ignored. The feuds, controversies, and public explosions nobody could ignore. When Warner Brothers suspended production in January 2011, Sheen launched an extraordinary media blitz that would become known as his winning tour. During interviews with ABC, NBC, TMZ, and countless radio shows, he repeatedly attacked Two and a Half Men creator Chuck Lorre, referring to him by insulting nicknames such as Kime Levine, Lorre's birth name, and calling him a clown and a stupid, stupid little man. On March 7, 2011, Warner Brothers Television officially fired Charlie Sheen, citing dangerous conduct, repeated public attacks against Chuck Lorre, and behavior that made it impossible to continue employing him under his contract. The lawsuit that followed was eventually settled privately in 2012. But the damage had already been done. More than 200 writers, camera operators, lighting technicians, makeup artists, production assistants, and other crew members suddenly found themselves without work when production shut down. John Cryer later reflected on the human cost, writing in his memoir that he felt terrible for the crew whose livelihoods had been disrupted. Ironically, time accomplished what lawyers could not. More than a decade after their spectacular falling out, Charlie Sheen and Chuck Lorre quietly reunited. In 2023, Sheen appeared in Lorre's Max comedy series Bookie, marking their first professional collaboration since the firing. Lorre later admitted the reconciliation had taken years to happen, while Sheen described returning to work with him as surprisingly comfortable. "It was really fun," Sheen said after filming. For fans who had watched the 2011 feud dominate headlines, the reunion seemed almost unimaginable, proving that even one of television's most bitter disputes could eventually cool with time. Not every controversy surrounding Two and a Half Men involved Charlie Sheen, however. Throughout its run, critics frequently argued that the show's writing relied too heavily on portraying women as interchangeable romantic conquests. Charlie Harper dated dozens of women across 12 seasons, and many female guest characters existed primarily to serve the next romantic or sexual joke. Defenders argued that the humor targeted Charlie's emotional immaturity rather than women themselves, but reviews throughout the series often described its gender politics as outdated or misogynistic. Another recurring criticism centered on Rose, played by Melanie Lynskey. Her relentless stalking, breaking into Charlie's house, secretly monitoring him, sabotaging his relationships, and even giving him substance in one storyline was consistently played for laughs. In later years, many viewers argued that if the genders had been reversed, those same storylines would likely have been received very differently. As television standards evolved, several other aspects of the series came under renewed scrutiny. Early episodes contained jokes about sexual orientation and gender identity that many critics now consider dated, while Jake Harper's teenage storylines increasingly revolved around adult relationships after audiences had watched him grow up from a 10-year-old child. Those storylines later became particularly controversial after Angus T. Jones publicly condemned the series in 2012. Even after 2.5 Men aired its final episode in February 2015, controversy continued to follow both the series and its cast. Just 9 months later, on November 17, 2015, Charlie Sheen publicly revealed during NBC's Today Show that he had been living with HIV for approximately 4 years. The announcement sent shockwaves through Hollywood. In the days that followed, former 2.5 Men guest star Jenny McCarthy, who had played Courtney Leopold, one of Charlie Harper's girlfriends, spoke candidly about the news. Appearing on The Jenny McCarthy Show, she admitted that her first reaction was surprise, and that she wished she had been informed before filming intimate scenes with Sheen. "I wish I would have known," she said, explaining that she had kissed him during filming and would have appreciated knowing this beforehand. However, infectious disease specialists quickly clarified that HIV cannot be transmitted through casual contact or closed mouth or ordinary kissing, and there was no realistic transmission risk from the scenes they filmed together. The series itself also found controversy outside the United States. On May 6, 2014, the United Kingdom's communications regulator Ofcom upheld a complaint against Channel 5 after it aired the Season 11 episode 4 Balls, 2 Bats and 1 Mitt at 6:30 p.m., well before the UK's 9 p.m. watershed, when more adult material is generally expected. The episode revolves around Alan and Lindsay discussing the possibility of having a threesome with another woman, with the subject dominating much of the storyline through dialogue and innuendo. Ofcom concluded that the episode contained frequent verbal references to intimate activity and a sustained focus on intimate behavior that made it unsuitable for an early evening audience when children were likely to be watching. Channel 5 acknowledged that the broadcast had been a scheduling mistake. The regulator ultimately ruled that the broadcaster had breached the UK's broadcasting code. Interestingly, neither controversy centered on misconduct during production itself. Despite the sitcom's reputation for sexual humor and Charlie Harper's revolving door of romantic partners, there has never been a documented pattern of actresses accusing the production of coercion or claiming they were pressured into filming intimate scenes against their wishes. But the show's problems never stopped chasing it. Even the finale couldn't escape the chaos. By the final years of 2.5 Men, the sitcom had already survived problems that would have ended most television shows. Charlie Sheen's firing on March 7, 2011, left CBS and Warner Brothers with an extraordinary challenge: replacing the star of one of television's biggest comedies. Ashton Kutcher was cast as billionaire Walden Schmidt, making his debut in September 2011. His first episode attracted nearly 28.7 million viewers, one of the largest sitcom audiences of the decade. The ratings proved the show could survive, but one question lingered throughout the remaining 4 seasons. Would Charlie Harper ever return? Replacing Sheen required a complete rewrite of the series. After 8 seasons centered on Charlie Harper's carefree lifestyle and his dysfunctional relationship with Alan, the writers abruptly killed Charlie off, claiming he had been struck by a train in Paris. Walden Schmidt then purchased the Malibu Beach House, giving the sitcom an entirely new premise. John Cryer later admitted the transition felt emotionally strange because, despite the public fallout, the cast had spent almost a decade working together before everything collapsed. As the series finale approached in February 2015, speculation intensified. The hour-long episode repeatedly hinted that Charlie Harper had survived. Mysterious phone calls, unseen figures, and constant references suggested the original star was about to make a surprise appearance. Fans, critics, and entertainment media widely believed Chuck Lorre and Charlie Sheen had secretly reconciled for one final scene. Instead, Lorre delivered one last twist. A man dressed exactly like Charlie Harper approached the front door of the Malibu house, but his face was never shown. It wasn't Charlie Sheen, but a body double. Before he reached the door, a grand piano crashed from above, killing the character instantly. The camera then cut to Chuck Lorre sitting in a director's chair. Looking at the audience, he said a single word, "Winning," mocking Sheen's famous 2011 catchphrase. Seconds later, another piano fell on Lorre himself, ending the series. Lorre later explained that Sheen had been invited back, but wanted a different ending, in which he appeared on camera to deliver an anti-substance message before walking away. Lorre rejected the idea, believing it didn't fit the finale, while Sheen disputed parts of that account. Whatever happened during negotiations, the reunion never materialized, leaving television with one of its most debated sitcom endings. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.